Welcome to the Portland Culinary Podcast and Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Stephen Shomler, your host. Joining me today is special guest, craft spirits expert. I have proclaimed him as such because he really is. Just look at the books he's written and edited. Oh my gosh. Eric Zandona, how are you?
I'm well, thank you very much.
Okay, so for those that want to know your story, we did a podcast with you that told your whole story, how you got to live the life you do. We just lay around and drink gin and tequila all day long, and are the director of the American Distilling Institute's judging craft spirits competition. We also did a podcast about that event, which is just phenomenal, because the reason people need to listen to that podcast is you guys give out gold medals that matter.
Yeah.
If someone is a real spirits fan, they need to go to the ADI website. They need to look at the past couple of years of competitions, find their region, and look at the local distilleries that won gold or double gold in their neck of the woods, and now they know for sure they're drinking world-class spirits. Gold medals that matter, that's what you guys provide. It's not just nonsensical medals like some competitions. So we did two other podcasts with you, but the one that we're doing today is your most recent book.
Yeah.
Let's see. The first book you wrote, just phenomenal, A World Guide to Whiskey Distilleries.
Yeah.
Which is just a fantastic book. And then the next book you wrote, The Bourbon Bible. I want to have you back sometime to talk about that. I did a podcast on the beer side, the Portland Beer Podcast, with Jeff Allworth, author of the Beer Bible. And if I could have the author of the Bourbon Bible talking about that, that's phenomenal.
There you go.
I love me some good bourbon.
Yeah.
But today, your most recent book came out April 2019, just a couple months ago. The Tequila Dictionary, an A to Z of all things tequila, mezcal, and agave spirits.
Yeah.
So, and one of the really cool things is you lived for a year in Mexico while you're working on this book.
That's right. Yeah. So my family and I are originally from San Francisco, and we lived there, and we needed a change. And so we thought for a while about moving to somewhere else in the U.S., and nothing really grabbed us. And then we had the thought, like, well, why don't we just move to Mexico? So we're like, talked about it, like, yeah, why not? So we did. So we just got up and moved.
And we moved to Oaxaca?
Yeah, we moved to Oaxaca, which is in southern Mexico. Oaxaca, the state, has a west coast, so it has a west coast on the Pacific. But we were living in Oaxaca City, which is in the center, basically, of the state.
And that's a great place to, Mexico seems like a great place to write a tequila book.
Yeah, it's a great place if you're interested in agave spirits, tequila, mezcal, and everything else, yeah.
And then, of course, now the Portland area is home. You've been here about a year.
Yeah.
And so great that we have you as a world-renowned resource right here in our own backyard.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know, what is tequila?
So tequila is a type of an agave spirit made in Mexico. It can only be made in Mexico, and specifically in the state of Jalisco, Tamaulipas, which is on the east coast of Mexico, and a few surrounding areas around the state of Jalisco. So it's in the olden days, it used to be called Mezcal de Tequila. So mezcal is like the general sort of term for agave spirits in Mexico. And it used to just be a mezcal that was made in the town of Tequila.
Tequila is an actual town. People don't realize that.
It's an actual town in the state of Jalisco.
And they have a pretty cool tequila museum.
I believe so, yeah.
In Tequila, Mexico.
Yeah, I would believe it. And so, but then at a certain point, tequila sort of, the way I think about it, it's like an evolutionary branch off of mezcal. So they diverted a little bit. And what made them different is what they became known for that was different is while many mezcals are made by cooking the agaves in a earth oven in the ground, a pit oven. Tequila made the difference where they started cooking the agaves with indirect heat or with steam in brick ovens that were above ground. And the result of that is the spirit became less smoky, got rid of pretty much all of the smoke. And so it had a cleaner taste, and people really liked it. They responded to it really well. And it became renowned partly in the U.S. because it was in a World's Fair in Chicago, and it won some award for spirits. And around that time is when they just dropped the mezcal part, so it just became known as tequila. And so it's a fantastic product. So it's made from agaves. It can be only made from blue agave, mostly in the state of Jalisco, with a few exceptions.
And that's a cool looking plant.
It's a cool looking plant.
And it can the states that in Mexico be made where you also mentioned Tamaulipas.
Yeah, Tamaulipas.
Nayarit, which I spent Christmas there as my sweetheart in Nayarit, just fantastic. Michoacan, and forgive me my Spanish if I'm mispronouncing. I mean no disrespect at all. My brother Marco would definitely get it right. Guanajuato, yes, I struggle with that word. Guanajuato. Those are the 4 states where tequila is actually made, and that'll matter later. One of my other questions. Okay, so you mentioned mezcal. Now, so here's my limited tequila mezcal experience. I've never had a tequila that tasted smoky.
Right.
And I've never had a mezcal that didn't taste smoky. Some were heavily smoked, some were lightly smoked.
Right.
Is that pretty reasonable definition?
Yeah, in that, so like I said, the reason for that is how the agaves are cooked. So it's not too dissimilar to Scotch in that it used to be that all Scotches were peated because that's part of the process of how they malted the grain, and that smoke flavor carried over in the distillate. But then at some point, technology allowed for malting using indirect heat, which eliminated the smoke contact. And so a lot of Scotch transitioned to no smoke. And now we have these regional differences where like Isla has a ton of peat flavor, and other places will have a little bit and some none at all. So the same thing happened in Mexico. So you have this traditional cooking process in earthen pits where they have these huge chunks of wood which are burning, and they get them into coals, and they pile the piñas around them and cover it with dirt and let it roast for a week or sometimes more. And that smoky air permeates the agaves, and the smoke flavor sticks to it, and when it ferments and distills, that carries over. And so that's why many mezcals will have a smoke flavor to them, is because of how it was physically cooked. There are ways to mitigate it, so some will be heavier, have more smoke flavor than others. But then with tequila, there's no wood. They're using indirect heat, either with steam or some other way of cooking them, just like with an oven, right? You're using indirect heat rather than fire. And so they cook that way, and so there's no smoke contact. And so because of that, they come out cleaner, and there's no smoke flavor.
So speaking of mezcal and Portland, we have a pretty... Teote is a restaurant that is on 12th, and back in the day, it was on a food cart pod on Division Street, D Street Noshery, which is now gone. At least 3 amazing restaurants. I used to eat at that pod at 3 different food carts that are now all restaurants come out of there. Koi Fusion came out of there, just a lot of amazing ones, but Teote came out of there, and so they're on 12th, not too far from Lardo. If you haven't been there, they have a really amazing tequila section.
I really want to go.
And what's cool is you can go out the back, and they've got this covered area in the back with a beautiful fire pit that you can, and they have a back bar outside that's open sometimes. It's just amazing. But then they recently opened out on Alberta Street a mezcaleria.
Oh yeah,
that sells a whole bunch of mezcal.
Yeah,
I think a mezcal. So those are you love tequila, you have mezcal. Those are 2 places sometime in the next year. Now the Portland area.
Yeah, they're on my list.
You got to check out.
Yeah.
In fact, I think this fall we should do an event at Teote for your book.
I'm game.
And some tequila and drinking. I would love that.
That would be fantastic.
Okay. So I learned early on, I actually, long story, didn't start drinking much alcohol till I was in my, till I was 40 roughly. And cheaper tequila, one of the most well-known brands, I won't name them, but I don't want to do them any damage, but I would get really bad headaches.
Yeah.
Really bad headaches. And then, like Patron, those kind of ones, they didn't get headaches.
Right.
And I discovered that 100% blue agave doesn't give me headaches, whereas the cheaper stuff that's really popular does. What's going on with those?
So there are basically 2 different sort of styles of making tequila. There's one, like you said, it's 100% agave, and they'll say that proudly on their label. And then you'll notice there will be some bottles of tequila that just say tequila, and you won't find 100% de agave anywhere on the label. And what's happening is in the industry, people will refer to those as mixto tequilas, though the official regulatory people don't like that term. They don't use it.
Well, They're stupid. Okay, so it's 51% for?
So the legal definition is a mixto tequila, or just what they call tequila, is 51% agave sugars and 49% sugar from some other source, usually sugarcane. They're co-fermented and then distilled, and then you get this product you get a tequila.
So real tequila, in my head, is 100% agave, not 51%. And if they don't like calling it mixto, they need to clean up their house and clearly identify, because I think the public deserves to know what they're drinking.
Yeah.
And to hide that, I think it's a lie. I think it's a lie, and I think it's bad marketing and bad branding, and it makes it hard for people to enjoy real tequila when they think, oh, I don't like it because I've had that stuff that gave me a headache.
Yeah, plenty of people have had that experience of drinking too much in college and thinking, oh, I don't like tequila. But the truth is they're not drinking 100% agave tequila. So it's a very different experience. And the reason why this originally came about is because of an agave shortage. I think it was back in the 70s originally, maybe earlier. And the limit was set back then at something like 70 or 75% agave sugar and only 30% other sources of sugar. And then eventually they knocked it down to 51% agave sugar. And it's just an economic thing. So it's just a way to make cheaper tequila with less agave, which to me is not as interesting.
It's also, to me personally, it's not tequila, and they're just cheating, but that's my opinion. Okay.
I mean, in some ways, it's not too dissimilar to the way, like, most Indian whiskey is a mixture of grain and sugarcane spirits. Like, in the U.S., we would call that moonshine, maybe, but it's not whiskey, right? So it's kind of similar.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of truth in advertising. Oh, speaking of truth in advertising, not all 100% agave tequila is the same. So tell me about this dirty secret of diffusers.
Yeah, so diffusers is a piece of technology that has been adopted in the last 10 or so years that has allowed for 100% agave tequilas to be made in a much more economical way. So when you roast...
Cheaper.
Cheaper, sure. When you roast agaves in a pit oven, the heat and the steam that gets created converts the converts the inulin, which is the starch source inside the agave, gets converted into fructose, which is a fermentable sugar. And that conversion process is about, I don't know, I've seen around 50 to 60%, maybe somewhere in the 70% efficient range.
And it's a lot of work to do that.
It's a lot of work. When you're cooking in a above ground oven or in an autoclave, which is a way of like pressure cooking with steam agaves, which is common in tequila, you get somewhere in the 80-ish% efficiency range for your sugar conversion, which means you get more alcohol at the end process. That's why this matters. So with diffusers, the efficiency for diffuser tequilas are somewhere in the like 95% range. So it's a lot more efficient than your mezcals, which makes the process much more economical, which means you can offer the same 100% agave product at a much cheaper price. Or what probably most brands did is they kept the price the same and just kept the margin. And so, but the problem is with diffuser tequilas, one, it's not as easy to find out who's doing what because they don't label it. They're not required to. And their quality is not there.
And so they're not using mature or fully grown or ripe agave.
So the diffuser technology does not require you to harvest ripe agaves that are fully mature. So cooking the agaves in an oven or in an autoclave, you need them to be fully mature and have the most available starches. Because they're less efficient in the conversion process during that cooking, you need the most that you can get possible. But because the diffuser is so efficient, you don't need to use fully ripe agaves. And so that creates a bunch of different problems for the ecology of agave. And the flavor just doesn't taste as good by and large.
I think I have the perfect example for that. My sweetheart hates bananas. I absolutely love bananas. And to me, I love a good banana split. And I could have a banana split with a nice, well-ripened banana.
Yeah.
Or if a banana split with a very, very, very green banana. Which one do you think would taste better?
Yeah.
So you can have unripe agave, diffused crappy tequila that shouldn't even be called tequila, or the real 100% real agave tequila made the old school way.
Right. And the thing that's happening in the diffuser is you're not cooking the tequila. You're not cooking the agaves. So you don't get the same flavors in the diffuser tequilas that you would get out of those that are using ovens or even an autoclave, because there's no actual cooking process happening. They're using chemical reactions to break down the inulin into the fructose, and then to break the bonds of the fructose into fermentables. And so there's no actual cooking process happening. So you miss those flavors that you can get in, traditional produced tequilas.
It just sounds like cheap fast food.
Yeah. In every industry, right, you have people who try to cut corners in order to make a better profit.
So myself as a consumer, if I want to make sure I'm getting 100% non-diffused blue agave tequila without this diffusing nonsense, where can I go to find out the information?
So one of the best sources that I have found is a website called tequilamatchmaker.com. And I have no relationship with them.
That's not a dating site for tequila lovers?
No. No, not for lovers, but to help you find tequilas that
It'll match you up with a tequila, not another tequila drinker.
Yeah, that's the idea, to match you with a tequila.
Or maybe we should start a site, tequiladrinkersdating.com.
Is that like farmers or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have no connection with them. I don't work with them in any way, but I just think that they have a really good resource. So you can, in their website, you open it up, they have a search bar, you can put in a brand name of any tequila, or you can use their NOM, which is NOM, and every bottle of tequila will have a number on it. It'll say NOM, those 3 letters, NOM, and then some 3-4 digit number. And you can put that in, and that is like a serial number that tells you what distillery that came from in Mexico. And so you can use that to search, and they've done a really good job, and some of it's crowdsourced information, and they will tell you like, oh yeah, they cook this with a autoclave, and they shred it with a mechanical shredder, or this one like Patron, which you like, is they cook it in an oven, and then they crush it using a tahona, which is a big stone wheel.
Yeah.
And so you can get a sense, or you'll see like, oh, this brand X, it was used made with a diffuser and distilled in a stainless steel column. That's going to be an indication that maybe it's not the highest quality tequila, even if it has a high price point.
So we mentioned that tequila is only made in those 4 states we talked about.
Yeah.
So if I make a product in the United States and I have blue agave and I cook it in an oven above ground and I use the wheel and et cetera, I'm doing the exact same process with the exact same ingredients. I just can't legally call it tequila.
No, you cannot. Yeah, so the name tequila for distilled spirits is a protected name.
Like champagne.
Like champagne or cognac or Armagnac. It's been codified in the North American Free Trade Agreement and a variety of other free trade agreements. And the U.S. basically has a reciprocity agreement with Mexico, so Mexico doesn't allow anything to be sold as bourbon or Tennessee whiskey that isn't made in the U.S. And we don't allow anything to be sold in the U.S. that says tequila or mezcal that wasn't made in Mexico according to their standards.
So is anybody in the United States making an agave spirit?
Yeah, there are a bunch of people now making agave spirits in the U.S., and some interesting stuff going on. Most of it is being made from agave syrup, so very similar to how you would find agave nectar or agave syrup at your local coffee shop or Costco or whatever, people use in their coffee or as a substitute sweetener. They're using that in a similar way that, people make rum by distilling molasses, right? You get molasses as a byproduct of a processing process for sugarcane. So the agave nectar, they take that, they ferment it and distill it, creates an agave spirit. There's a small handful of people, really at this point, only one that maybe two that I know of, that are growing, cooking, and distilling whole agaves in the U.S. So recently there was an event where there's a farmer, I believe he's in Woodland, California, who's growing agaves. His agaves have reached maturity, so they're around 7+ years old.
Oh my gosh!
And they harvest.
I thought wasabi takes 18 months. Oregon Coast Wasabi has a real wasabi farm in the Oregon Coast, and it takes 18 months to get those to harvest.
Yeah.
Agave takes 7 years to get to maturity.
It depends on the variety. So blue agave and espadin, which is the common variety used in mezcal, can take 7 to 8 years to reach maturity. Other varieties like Tobala and others can take as long as 25 years to mature.
Wow.
Yeah.
No wonder people are cheating with the diffusers.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, it takes time. And then there are all sorts of market reasons and farming and cultural and reasons why people try to cheat in various ways. Some of it's legal and some of it's not. And
Right.
So there's this farmer in, I believe, again, like I said, in Woodland, California. He's growing these agaves. They recently reached maturity. So there was an event at his farm, or just outside his farm, where the agaves were harvested and they were roasted in a pit oven similar to mezcal. And then those agaves were trucked to Alameda, California, fermented and distilled by St. George Spirits on Alameda, California. And I'm assuming, I haven't talked to them about this yet, but I'm assuming some amount of that is being kept as an unaged expression, which they'll sell as an agave spirit. And some of that is probably going into a barrel to be sold as an aged expression. So that's my guess of what's going on. But that's exciting because agaves are kind of temperamental in where they can grow. Their homeland, like where there's the most genetic diversity, is in Oaxaca. And then it kind of limits as you go farther north. But agaves can grow in California and in the Southwest, in Arizona, New Mexico, in that area.
There's not big fields of them in Minnesota quite yet.
No. So that's the reason why there are people making, like there's a guy here in Oregon, Cannon Beach, Oregon. He's making an agave spirit from syrup, which he then distills with jalapenos. I think it's fantastic. It's not tequila. It's not mezcal. But it's a great spirit. Still.
And it's got agave.
Yeah, and it's made with agave as the base, and he's got this really great, bright green jalapeno flavor that he distills into it. And I love using it in margaritas, and I think it's tasty.
And how hot is it?
It's not hot. That's the thing, that the way he does it, there's a little bit of, you get the sensation of like, oh yeah, this was spicy, but it's mostly the flavor of the jalapeno that comes through.
Oh, that's fantastic. I got to try that.
Yeah.
I love it. Look at you bringing the good knowledge, local knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so the subtitle of your book is an A to Z of all things tequila, mezcal, and agave spirits. And if people love tequila, they need to get your book. And
Yeah.
where can they get your book?
So you can get it at Amazon, any online book retailer, and also Powell's or any other local bookseller.
Okay, so they got to get your book. But you mentioned in your book, we'll just briefly hit on them, and then you need to read the book to get the real inside scoop.
Yeah.
But 3 other agave spirits. So Raicilla?
Yeah, so tequila and mezcal are obviously the most 2 well-known at this point, but then there's a few others that are less well-known. One is called Raicilla, and that is essentially agave spirits made in the state of Jalisco that can't be classified as tequila. So they're not made with blue agave, or they're made in there's some difference in how they're made that they exclude them. Usually it's the variety of agave that they're using. They're using other types, not blue. So that's one. So that's Raicilla, that's again made in Jalisco. But there's another spirit called Bacanora. Bacanora is a town in the state of Sonora in northern Mexico. And it's named for that town in a similar way that tequila is named after the town that it originated from.
And does it taste like tequila, or is it distinctive flavor?
The flavor profiles of Bacanora are more similar to mezcal. So You'll find Bacanoras that are cooked in a very similar way with a pit oven and, distilled in small copper pots, and you use natural fermentation and those sorts of things. So the flavor profile is more similar to Mezcal. So if you like Mezcal, you'll like Bacanora. But the tradition there has always been to just call it Bacanora after the town. So it has a different name and has its own protected region in Mexico. U.S. doesn't yet have a reciprocal protection agreement for that term, or for Sotol.
So just back to Bacanora. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to try that sometime.
Yeah.
But it makes me think of, if you've heard of Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Baco Noir?
No.
I'm not making it up. BACO Noir, just like a Pinot Noir, Baco Noir, and Girardet. It's a really cool grape. And Girardet was the first winery to be making it. Mm-hmm. Catman Cellars, my friend Ten Williams at Catman Cellars, he also makes an amazing Baco Noir. So there's a couple different wineries making Baco Noir wine. So that we should do like a Baco night where we have Bacanora, Bacanora Spirit, and Baco Noir wine.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Okay, and Sotol.
Yeah, Sotol's not technically an agave spirit. For a long time, the plant Sotol was classified as an agave, but then botanists at some time in the past reclassified it into a different family.
So kind of like Pluto no longer is a planet.
Right, Pluto is no longer a planet. Sotol is no longer an agave.
Oh, poor Sotol.
But traditional Sotol is made in a very similar way to Mezcal and Bacanora. So it's a plant with lots of leaves on it. They'll trim the leaves off and they'll cook the center of the plant, which they usually refer to as the piña. And then they'll crush it and ferment it and distill it. And you get this really interesting spirit that comes from it.
Nice. And you said Coyote. They make a...
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different brands. There's one brand that I know well called Coyote Sotol, and they have two expressions. They have one from Chihuahua. So Sotol can be made in 3 states, Chihuahua, Durango, and Coahuila, something like that. I can't remember. So 3 northern states, basically, in Mexico. And... so they have 2 expressions, one from Chihuahua, one from Durango. Both of them are made by the same person, but in 2 different places, and so they taste different.
Because of the terroir.
Yeah, because of the terroir. So they use natural fermentation, which basically means the yeast that's floating around in the air.
Like a wild ale brewer.
Yeah, like a wild ale brewer or a natural wine producer, people like that. So most spirits traditionally use controlled yeast, so yeast that's been propagated by the producer. Almost all tequila is made with exogenous yeast, which just a fancy way of saying yeast that they bought and put into the barrel or into the fermenter rather than yeast that's just floating around. And so because they're using wild yeast for Sotol, the flavor profile gets directed by the yeast that does the fermentation. And so even though they're made by the same person, because it's made in 2 very different places with different yeast, you get different flavors. So it's a fun drink.
Yeah, you mentioned natural wine, and I was just in Bozeman, did a bunch of podcasts there, and there is a restaurant in Bozeman that has been a couple years in a row, top 100 wine restaurants in the United States in Bozeman.
All right.
And they focus on natural wines. And it was so much fun to get to. He also makes chicken skin tacos.
Oh,
and they've gotten a lot of notoriety lately, and it's Bissell, B-I-S-L, capital B, capital I, capital S, capital L. Amazing chef, incredible story. But these chicken tacos, the tortilla, the shell is chicken skin, and then it's chicken in there. And it was so much fun to get to try all these natural wines with him because he's so passionate about them. So I know that's an aside.
I'm a big fan of natural wine.
All right, you get yourself out to Bozeman and get to Bissell. I think you'll have a good time. So I want to help people. If someone doesn't know, if someone knows tequila, great. But if someone doesn't, I have a lot of young people I connect with, in their 20s, that are just starting out to check out drinking, and so I'm going to pick Patron just because it's easy to get in the entire country.
Yeah.
And I think someone should get, in my opinion, tell me if this makes sense, 3 or 4 bottles, and then pour the 3 or 4 ones we're about to talk about, and then sip them and taste the difference.
Yeah.
So silver or Blanco, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah. So in the legal definition, you can use Blanco or silver or interchangeably. It just means unaged.
And so it's kind of brand new.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, technically, there's like you can do a couple of days or something like that in a barrel, but it's not very effective.
Okay. And the
Reposado.
Reposado. Yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm tired. Reposado. So
And
that's
so the four basic sort of categories of tequila. Well, this is somewhat carried over in mezcal, but it's blanco, reposado, añejo, and then extra añejo and tequila.
so reposado is aged
Rested. Yeah.
for 2 months roughly.
Yeah.
At least 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. And añejo.
Añejo is a year, and then extra añejo is anything over 3 years.
And as they get more age, they get darker.
Yeah, they're pulling color from the barrel, so they usually get darker. So if you're able to try 3 or 4, depending on the brand, tequilas from the same producer that go in that range, is a really good way to see how you see the effect of the barrel on the flavor of the agave spirit. So Blanco, you're getting unaged, so it's just what the spirit tasted like from the producer. And then the reposados with a little bit of wood on top, and the añejo with a little bit more, and the extra añejo with significantly more. So it's a good way to see how the flavor can change over time.
And I just pick Patron because it's easy to get across the country.
Yeah.
It's a really good sipping tequila. Same like Don Julio.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but that's because you're not buying the fake mixto stuff that's
Right.
49% crap.
Yeah.
My words, again, not yours. But if you really want a good sipping tequila, it is exponentially better. As far as just you get the tequila flavors, and it's just a better spirit, a better experience.
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about Blanco tequilas that are good. One of my most memorable tequila experiences was drinking an extra añejo, and this was early on in my drinking experience, and just being blown away by the flavors of the agave and the barrel and how they mix together. But I really love high quality blancos. So Patron is good, Fortaleza is good, Tapatio is good, and then there's a brand that I really like for mixing called Cimarron, which can be found in California and Oregon, a few other places.
And I'll put a picture and a link to the website. There's an article. If you go to PortlandCulinaryPodcast.com, there will be an article. And I love a picture. Someone says, "What's that Cimarron? How do you spell that?" I have a picture so people can find it.
Yeah.
And that's good for mixing?
Yeah, it's great for mixing. It's 100% agave tequila, but it's like $20-something a liter. So it's really good value, and it's great for making margaritas and palomas or tequila sunrise.
Okay, so you leapt ahead to the next category. I want people to get those 3 or 4 kinds of like a Patron, to get those different flavors, and to see sipping, and then they can get some Cimarron. Is that right?
I think it's Cimarron.
Cimarron, and then
like
what's
that.
the one that's not Tapatio? That's the hot sauce I like.
Yeah. Don Julio, is that the one?
No, the Tapatio.
Tapatio.
Oh, so
Yeah, it's the same name.
same name.
Yeah.
Oh, I was somehow.
It's confusing.
Okay.
But it's not hot sauce.
Not hot sauce, okay.
I'm not recommending you drink hot sauce. So just to be clear, there is a tequila brand called Tapatio.
Okay, so they get one of those 2 or something similar for mixing, and the 3 like superstar, rock star tequila cocktails. What's a margarita?
So a margarita is tequila, orange liqueur, and lime juice.
And on the rocks or blended?
I prefer on the rocks.
Amen, me too.
But, a blended drink can be fun.
Yes, it can. So margarita is a good one. And for those that don't know, what's a paloma?
Paloma is tequila and grapefruit soda, or you can use fresh grapefruit juice and then club soda. So it's a light drink.
And that's another classic tequila. If you're new to tequila and you want to try a tequila cocktail, that's another classic one. Yeah. I think margarita is the most drank cocktail in the United States, I think.
Yes, I believe so.
And then
they're delicious.
Oh, they're incredible, yes. And tell me about a tequila sunrise. What's that?
So tequila sunrise is interesting, and there's a real fun entry for it in the book. So what we know as the tequila sunrise is traditionally tequila, orange juice, and grenadine. And that drink largely became popularized in the 1970s in in no small part by the Rolling Stones. So the story is, now the details of this might not be exactly true or 100% accurate, but the story, it's fun. So we're going to go for it for now. The story is that when the Stones were starting one of their world tours, they had a party with Bill Graham, who's a concert promoter in San Francisco. They had a party with him in the North Bay in California at this bar, and these bartenders created this drink for them, and they loved it. It was tequila, orange juice, and grenadine, and they were like, this is amazing. And according to, what's his name? Oh, yeah. According to Keith Richards, that tour became known to them as the Cocaine and Tequila Sunrise Tour. Because everywhere they went, they were doing cocaine and drinking tequila sunrises. And the popularity of this drink spread like wildfire over the whole country. And like a year and a half later, the Eagles came out with a song called Tequila Sunrise. And this drink just came on fire.
And there was even a mildly adequate movie in the 80s called Tequila Sunrise.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson, Kurt Russell, and Raul Julia.
Yeah. So what I found out in the process of this is that there was another drink that predates this, also called the Tequila Sunrise, which has a different formulation, but it uses tequila and a liqueur called creme de cassis. Creme de cassis is just a liqueur. Cremes are usually liqueurs with lots of extra sugar, a little bit higher sugar content than normal.
And cassis is a berry, right?
And a cassis berry, yeah. So it creates this drink that's really fun, where you get this graduated sort of color gradient from dark purple to sort of this light gray purple color in the glass, and it's a lot of fun.
So how do I order the old school one versus the new school one?
Well, you have to know that the bar one, that they have creme de cassis, and that they know of it. And if they don't know of it, you can tell them, buy the tequila dictionary, and you can find the recipe.
Exactly. I love it. That's fantastic. That is absolutely brilliant. And that is a great story. And then your book is just rife with stories like that. It's throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
I have a whole entry on songs about tequila. That was because, everybody sings about tequila. It's a fun drink.
Yeah. What's that one? Tequila makes your clothes come off.
Yeah. So the downside is a lot of the songs have stories about how tequila made people do bad things or things outside of their normal character.
Yeah, we're not advocating for that.
No, and I disagree with that wholeheartedly. It's not the tequila, it's you.
I like that, yes.
If you're scratching somebody's car, throwing paint on it because tequila, it wasn't the tequila, it was you.
Maybe mezcal, but never tequila. No, I'm just kidding if you love mezcal. Well, I'm super excited about your book, The Tequila Dictionary. It's been so great to have you on the podcast. As I mentioned, we did two other episodes with you. One about your role. You're the director of the American Distilling Institute, judging craft spirits competition, which I think you give gold medals that matter. And then we did a podcast where you just told your story, how you ended up living the life you do, which is a really exciting episode. And I want you back sometime where we can do a podcast about the Bourbon Bible.
Yeah, let's do it. Bourbon, aquavit, let's cover it all.
I love it. All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us on the Portland Culinary Podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.